welcome to Commander Central episode 153, and today we're going to talk about pet decks in Commander. I'm Dana.
I'm Max.
And I'm Chris.
And I'm Ryan.
And I'm Zack with a K.
Sometimes you're Zack with a K, sometimes you're Zack with an H, depending on the mood I'm in.
And sometimes with a 4.
That's true too, but never
Commander
a 38.
Social, welcome to Commander Central. How you guys doing?
Oh, thanks for having us.
Yeah.
I'm so excited to be here.
For sure. We've been talking about it all
Thanks
week.
for,
We've been
coming
super
on.
stoked. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, we had a really good time hanging out with you guys in Vegas, and it's kind of nice to have a reunion here online.
Absolutely.
Before we get any further, I wanted to give a shout out to listener Shane Dahlquist, who, like 10 minutes ago, as we're recording this, just posted a picture of his wife and him getting married. So he literally just got married. So shout out to Shane. Congratulations.
Congrats, dude.
Oh, man, congratulations. Awesome.
Yeah, that was kind of cool to be let in on that here right before it happened. So this will air on Monday. It'll already be, hopefully he'll still be married 4 days later, but
you never know.
We'll find out. Good luck, Shane. Fingers crossed.
If he's not, it's all your fault.
It is my fault. I take full responsibility.
I'm just going to not comment on any of this.
Okay. So we have Ryan and Zack here from Commander Social. You guys are, 20-some episodes into your current show?
I think 21, actually.
Yeah.
Yep.
And you knocked out triple digits exactly on Brothers War as well. So you guys are absolute veterans at this podcasting thing at this point.
I mean, I'm not going to say we're the best podcast on Commander out there, but we might be.
I was going to say, don't raise the bar too high for us. Then we're going to disappoint.
It's possible you're the third best, I think.
Yes, let me take this so you don't get any backlash. You are the third best compared. You follow Dana's other show up, EDA Track, in second, and we must be first.
Well, how about this? They're the best Commander podcast not featuring me.
I'll take that.
I'll allow that. Yeah.
All right.
And I thought that this was Dana's other podcast. I thought EDH Rec was his main gig.
Well, that's enough for me tonight, guys. I'm going to go. Nice talking to you.
See you later, Max.
I don't want to say which podcast is the side piece. That wouldn't be polite.
Chris just needs to come to Seattle, so I back up this year.
Well, the way he's been renovating his basement, apparently it's us.
Yeah.
So we've got to hang out with you guys in Vegas. Actually, Ryan first met us last year in Vegas, right?
That is true.
Indeed, yeah, we played a game together.
But Zack wasn't there. He wasn't. How did that work, Zack? Your pro
so what
officer
happened
let you
was Ryan was
state?
like, "I'm going to Vegas, dude," and I was like, "What?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'm going to Vegas." And I was like, "What?" And he's like, "Yeah, it's for this big Magic tournament. It's gonna be awesome." And I was like, "Well, I guess let me know how it goes, man." And then he's like, the next week he's like, "Okay, bye." And then he came back and was like, "Bro, you gotta go next year." And I was like, "Okay." And then I did.
And we started planning for it right then and there.
Yep.
We kind of did the same thing. Like after we got back last year, the first year, we were like, "All right, when's Vegas next year? Let's get it on the calendar."
And we did.
And we did, basically, yeah. So this was the second year we got to hang out with Ryan. We got to meet Zack in person for the first time. We, played quite a few games, and we wound up trying to find a burger on the Strip at midnight after shutting the GP down on Sunday night, basically. That was a good time.
It's a good burger, too.
Zack and I actually wound up doing a movie podcast with John Dunning talking about 500 Days of Summer earlier this year.
That's true. That was pretty awesome.
So we've got a little bit of history here, so it's nice to finally have you guys on the show and talk about Magic. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourselves to get started and how you guys got podcasting together?
Zack, I'll let you take that one. You tell the story so well.
About how we started podcasting together.
Yeah, or how we met and became friends and eventually like basically family.
Well, one day I was walking on the beach and I see this guy walking towards me, and then we get like right to where we can make eye contact, and at that point we knew it was love, and then we've been hanging out ever since. Actually, we actually used to play another card game that was for the World of Warcraft video game. So it was a card game based on a video game that we played for a while, and then we were friends, but we weren't as good as friends. And then I think our friendship really cemented when there was a time when we both like happened to just not have jobs at the same time. So literally like that whole period, we just like hung out and played Magic and talked about Magic. And then, there was some podcasting that happened.
When there's a couple of guys gathered together, what is that, in a room talking about their opinions, that just naturally turns into a podcast?
I mean, I think that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we were already talking about Magic like all the time anyway.
I mean, that's basically the same thing we were doing. It was like we would go out before we played EDH on Tuesday and have a beer and dinner for an hour and talk about Commander and Magic. And at some point, we're like, well, let's just put a microphone down on the table and record the conversation we're having, which is pretty much what we wound up doing.
Nice.
I will say I thought it was really cool to hear how EDH kind of started at your store. And that was just like on the most recent episode that y'all recorded. And you were talking about how you each had a buddy and you were playing. You're like, oh, we'll just go play at the store. And like, that's how you guys met Max. And you guys kind of started the whole play group. And I just thought that was really awesome to hear.
Well, thank you. Yeah. I mean, we were, of the first 6 people playing there basically in this town at the game shops, we were 3 of them. We like all kind of came in and met within the first couple weeks, and
6 years later.
Right. Exactly. It's crazy. And the funny part about it was Max and Chris lived like 20 yards apart, basically.
Wow. We did. And it literally took us a year to figure that out.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Playing together, and at some point, Max like, did I see your truck?
I swear I saw you on your motorcycle by my house. And it was like a weekend. We figured it out at a pre-release because we did every pre-release that weekend. It was like M15 or something. And I'm like, wait a minute. You live next door to me. Oh, I'm going to ride with you the rest of the weekend.
Yeah, save the planet. That works. I like it.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Did anybody get to play any fun games this week? I will ask the Commander Social guys if you had anything worth talking about here in terms of games you played.
This week's been a little bit of a different one because my wife was out of town, and so
all right.
Yeah, so I was home with the kids, which was great, and actually Zach came over and stayed with me and helped me take care of the kids. So it was definitely like a hashtag my2 MTG dads.
Oh, nice. So no, there was no Magic from you guys, is what you're saying.
Well, I guess we got some what I would call faux brawl games in. We were testing for something, and we played 60-card Singleton, but with no like commander. And like the first time we played, like I just like smashed Ryan. It was great. And then we tested again, and we played. And then Ryan was like, "Oh, hey man, remember that time you smashed me?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "I'm gonna hand you your butt." And I was like, "Oh," it's like lame.
My favorite part is playing Arcane Signet, and it does actually nothing. Yeah. It's like 2 mana that does nothing.
Right.
Arcane Signet can do nothing?
You don't have a commander.
I guess.
Yeah, like it's standard legal, so you can put in a standard deck, but you don't have a commander, so nothing.
It doesn't do anything, yeah.
Maybe it's not that good.
Yeah.
Well, Chris brought his new Phoenix Persistent Petitioners deck to the shop. And I will mention the first game we played because we sat down and I'm like, he starts playing Phoenix and doing mill stuff, and I drew a Mirrodin Besieged. And that's the new card from Modern Horizons, where if you cast an artifact, you have 2 modes. The first one lets you make a mirror or mur. I always forget how you pronounce it. It's like Zach or Zach.
Whatever, same difference.
Yeah, and wow. And that's usually the mode I pick. But the second mode is if you, at the end of the turn, you can draw a card and discard a card. And then if you have 15 or more artifacts in your graveyard, target player loses the game. So since I'm going against a mill deck, I'm like, well, let's just try the new Phyrexia mode on here and see what happens. And Chris did Bazooka Bog me when I was at like 12, I think. But you had what's the artifact you had out that mills when you untap a
Mesmeric Orb.
Mesmeric Orb he had out. So at that point, I'm like, well, I'm just going to tap every land at the end of the previous turn and mill myself for like 8 or 10. And I got there. I got to kill on Chris when I was down to about 20 cards or so left in my library. But then I managed to kill the other 2 players on the next 2 turns. So I got to win a game.
Did nothing.
I got to win a game using the alt kill condition on Mirrodin Besieged.
Oh, that's spicy. I like that a lot.
Yeah, that's real
so that
sweet.
Felt good. That's like living the dream, I think, with that deck. However, So we wrapped that game up. Pod splits up. I went to a different table, played with 3 different people, and the deck next to me was a new Pramicon deck, so that kind of slowed up combat. I was playing my Sphinx deck and dropped a Tempsis, the new Sphinx that has the alt kill condition where if you deal combat damage, you can reveal your hand, and if you have 6 different CMCs, the person loses the game. I went around the table and killed all 3 players with the Tempsis alt kill condition as well.
Wow, were those back-to-back games?
Back-to-back games.
Oh, nice.
And it wasn't alt win, it was alt kill. So 6 consecutive players I took out with the alt kill conditions.
Living the dream.
With 2 different decks, mind you.
Man, I feel like that's a Guinness Book of World Record kind of situation.
Well, then I was trying to think, like, do I have anything else? Do I have another deck that has some kind of, like, do I have Infect in any of my decks? See if I can do 3 players with Infect.
You do have,
I've done it. It's sweet.
Like that. The Treasure Trove enchantment, that just wins the game.
Treasure Trove enchantment.
Revel in Riches I have. But yeah, that just wins the game.
Dear Ryan at CCO, I know my next altar.
So actually, I have a question for Chris. How many persistent petitioners are in that Phoenix deck?
As of right now, I started with 20 of them because I wanted to see how the deck played first before I start modifying it too hard. And I think I need a few more because there was a few times where I'd only get like 3 out and then wish I had more. So
25 maybe?
I'm going to try at 25. It's really hard to balance it.
Oh,
though.
I'm sure.
And actually, I have one of the Portal petitioner. There's an advisor from Portal that costs 1 more than persistent petitioner, but it's an advisor, so you can tap it for the mill effect.
Okay.
And it draws a card when it comes into play. I actually happen to have one, so it'll work with the deck. I'll just bring it in for
Yeah.
you. It's
Okay.
like a I'll bring it in just to throw it in there.
Yeah. I mainly use them for chump blocking duty and let all my other cards do the work.
But you won a game with it.
Yes, I did. That was not really my doing of winning. Like, I milled out the Super Friends player. Then the other player playing Scarab God, I milled him out, and on his final turn during his upkeep, he made all these copies. Copied my Fennex and copied a whole bunch of other stuff and milled me out down to 1 card. Well, it so happens I have a Nexus of Fate in my deck.
Oh.
So it's the only card left in my deck. So then he lost, and then the next player, I'm like, I just take infinite turns and mill you out? And he's like, yeah, good game.
Nice. I wondered why you had Nexus of Fate in that deck. Okay, that
Because
makes sense.
Mesmeric Orb can get me hard, too.
Sure, yeah.
So as long as it just stays in the deck, I can't mill myself out or someone can't copy my stuff. So
Okay, all right, I get it. Anything from... And Max didn't play this week because there was hockey on.
There was hockey on, and I cried all night long. It was bad.
should have
So
came in and played.
I went to play Borderlands instead.
I was like, was it the hockey
Borderlands
that made you
fever.
cry, or was it something else?
The hockey made me cry. It was terrible. And then I played Borderlands and got happy again.
Nice.
All right. Okay, well, do we have any housekeeping here to take care of, Max?
We have a few new patrons to announce because I forgot to announce them last week, and I apologize to every person on this list.
Oh, boy.
So head over to CMDR, patreon.com/CMDR Central to check out our rewards. If you are so inclined to support us financially, you will be supporting me wearing pants when we move the video, along with a bunch of other cool stuff. Just head over there and check it out. But we want to say thank you to the following new patrons: Tim Peterson, Jeffrey Gardner, Jim Iyer, Lewis, Justin Underland, Anthony Mellagrain, Corey Briscoe, and the entire MTG Lexicon crew joined
Oh, nice.
recently.
Very cool.
Man,
And I guess we should talk about our contests.
Yes.
So this will be wrapping up at the end of this coming week. But for Twitter, we're giving away those Ultra Pro Is It sleeves that we picked up at Magic Fest Vegas. So find that tweet, follow us, and retweet it, and you'll get entered to win that. We'll announce that sometime in November. And then for Patreon, if you support us or continue to support us, you'll be entered in to win that Sir Gwen deck that we built back on episode 147. We'll be giving that away to one lucky patron.
All right, very cool.
Yeah, and that deck was sweet. That was a really cool episode that y'all did. I'm definitely a fan, and whoever wins that is really lucky.
hope I win
Thanks
it.
a lot. That was fun to do. We kind of did the one on show 100 just to try something and discovered it was a fun show to do. So
Yeah, and we totally wing those shows. Like when we do the like that type of show, I do no prep whatsoever. It's just this is a live build. I'm going to use my knowledge and the computer and live build it.
Same here.
Well, an example of that would be one of the things I had talked about on a couple different episodes. I think our previous show and on the EDH Redcast was how good Bludgeon Brawl wound up being in that deck, because you can make all your mana rocks into equipment and equip them for free and just kill somebody. And then, of course, because we were kind of doing it live, I forgot about that card completely when we were doing the live build. So it's really easy to miss stuff, but I don't know, it kind of keeps it fresh and fun too when you're kind of like thinking on your feet, because that's what you do oftentimes for that first pass of making a deck, is you're just kind of doing it off the top of your head.
Yep, that's how my petitioner's deck is. I threw it together in like 3 hours and took it to the shop and let's see what happens.
Yeah, I definitely.
You can build an EDH deck in 3 hours?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
I'm a master deck builder. You forget I'm a competitive Modern player, so deck building is really easy. You just got to know what cards are powerful and what cards are trash.
They're all trash
like
cards,
all
Chris.
of Max's decks.
It's all trash cards.
That's a great segue, though.
That's a subtle T-shirt plug.
Right, there we go, yeah.
Speaking of, Ryan, you want to take over? You want to do the plug for us?
All right, so until the end of the year, we have a contest going where if people buy more of Max's Scumbags Unite T-shirts or more of Chris's Trash Cards shirts, the person who sells less shirts gets a pie in the face. Did I get there?
That would be the equivalent of the alt kill condition on a Tempsus or Mirrodin Besieged.
The new sweatshirts we have apply as well.
Okay.
Because it's winter time. It's cold in Wisconsin.
True.
I need a new sweatshirt.
Is there a cardigan version of the Scumbag Unite one? Because I need that.
No, but I can work on that for you.
Okay.
Also, I heard that we're supposed to be getting the shirts in pink soon.
There are no pink, but there are brighter colors than the gray, the dark red, and the black we originally had.
There's like a baby blue and kind of a salmonish orange.
Yeah.
It's a weird looking color.
Find the listing under the comfort tee versus the premium tee. Those are all the new colors.
Okay.
Max was going through an emo phase the first time we set that up, so we had
Apparently.
we had black and blacker were your options, I think, at the time.
This is what happens when you trust me with this stuff.
Right.
So who's winning right now?
I would like to inform the entire world that right now Chris is winning by 1.
Thank you to everyone who bought a shirt of mine. I love you so
I need to
much.
buy another
Henry
shirt.
Stukenborg, I am mad at you. I thought we were friends, Henry. We got close in Vegas.
He betrayed you.
I might just have to
Sounds right,
shamelessly,
though.
the 30 people that show up for Commander Night when you're not there, I'm just going to be like, see, Max isn't even here to play. You guys should just order shirts.
All he cares about is hockey. He doesn't love you guys. Buy my shirt.
Pretty much.
So our main topic here, we're going to talk about, speaking of deck building, we're going to talk about pet decks. And I spent a little bit of time trying to figure out the definition of what a pet deck was, but I kind of eventually had to concede that that definition probably shifts a lot from player to player. And it's kind of a nice little sidebar to this. Zach and Ryan just did a show. It would have been the show that aired
This week.
before this one. So we're recording this on a Thursday. It would have been the show that aired on Tuesday about what you guys referred to as your stable of decks. And that's kind of something I think of as like my John Peel box. And I will quick reference John Peel here and explain who he is. I know Ryan.
Thank you, because I have no clue who that is.
So
I
Ryan
know who
looked
it
it
is.
up.
I just don't get the reference.
That's where I'm at.
So John Peel was a DJ back when DJs were a real thing, and he's in England, and was well known for his record collection and like his love of kind of obscure music. But he had next to his door in his house a box of his favorite records, and that was, he loved all his music collection, obviously, but like that was the thing. If his house was on fire, these were the ones he would grab on his way out the door.
Oh, okay, I get it
Nice.
now.
And it was a real thing, and it's actually, you can go look up the list online. So if you're a music nerd, I would recommend looking up this box of John Peel's favorite records, because it is a good way to listen if you're curious about some, particularly like 80s and 70s music, stuff that you don't hear in the radio very often. It's actually a good way to get into that kind of thing if you are a person. So I will plug John Peel in general and looking him up, but I think the stable is kind of what I think of as that John Peel box. And I'm going to throw this over to Ryan and Zack for a second. Do you want to do a summary of what that show was about and what you guys talked about with the deck stable thing?
Yeah, we can do it. So this was an idea that was inspired by you guys, right? So, and I even said that on the show.
Yeah.
That I myself am particularly bad about upgrading my decks. And so I wanted to kind of like force action. I wanted a way to essentially give myself something to focus on. And I said, well, maybe I'll just like pick my top 5. And I pitched it back and forth with Zach, and we talked about it a lot.
We did.
And
a lot.
how much, Zach?
So much it wasn't even funny. But yeah, it's the decks that Ryan's gonna update. And like the cool thing about it is like I'm more of an updater and less of a builder, but I'd make these updates and I really have no idea what the impact was, like if that card was better than the cards I had taken out, and like that's kind of what I want to do here with the documenting of the stable, which Ryan, tell me about the spreadsheet.
Oh yeah, we got spreadsheets.
Nice.
So Dana, this will appeal to you because I know you are recording all of your games this year, just like I am. And I thought, it would be really cool to see which decks I played the most and if that corresponds to like what I put in the stable. And I think that's probably going to happen. But I also thought it'd be really cool to like cross-reference it and say like, oh, if I had, if I played 12 games with this deck, like did it win more after I made the changes and stuff like that? So it's really just kind of like letting me wrap my brain around all of the nerd statistics and data, which I really like. And so, yeah, I thought this would be a good thing to do. And I also thought it might be like a really cool social experiment where I can just like share the link like in my Twitter feed and, just like hand the link over to people and go, this is me. This is my Commander experience, if that makes any sense.
No, yeah, completely.
Completely doesn't make sense.
Because I think we have no idea what you're saying. No, I get that totally, because I do think I had to think about this a little bit. I do think people build decks without any intent of keeping the deck, and that's something that I didn't really realize. I assumed everyone was like me, where like their goal was to build a deck that would be your friend forever. And some decks don't make the cut. Like when I build, but the intent is to have them make that cut. Like when I brew a deck, my intent is I'm hoping I fall in love with that deck and I play it until the end of time, and I tweak it along the way. And it's a ever evolving, growing thing that's always part of this stable of decks that I keep playing. But I don't know if I don't think that's a thing most players think about. I think they just build a deck and play it until they get bored and move on.
Yeah, so for me, I think part of it is I like the experience of actually building the deck. So if I only like made decks with the intention of keeping them around forever, I would have like 50 decks all the time, and that's too many. Like, so yeah, I think that's where I differ a little bit in that. To me, when I see a new commander or a new card, I get excited and I think about possibilities. Like Emery Lurker of the Lock is the one that's kind of like in my brain right now. And I'm like, how would I make that? And what would it be like? And I kind of picture it and I'm like, the only way to get this out of my brain is to build it, right? I don't have to physically build it, but I have to look through cards on Scryfall and find out and actually make something happen.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I'm kind of like Dana. Like when I build a deck, generally speaking, like I expect to be like, I love this deck. That's all I want to play. It's gonna be the best forever.
Yeah.
And like now we're married. And then the thing is, decks do fall out of favor, and I do build new ones. But the intent is always to be like, this is my new wife deck. Yeah, no, my deck. Yeah, the one I like the best.
Dear Yawgmoth, do you take Zach?
Right.
So how many of those kind of keeper decks or canonical decks or decks like you plan on staying married to long term are you guys currently at?
I'm at about 5.
Okay.
That's where I'm at. That just happened to match what Ryan wanted to put in his, but I definitely have 5 decks that I'm like always trying to kind of update and keep powered up.
Yeah, Zach wanted to put more, but I said no.
That's where you're staying at? Okay.
No, that's how it really works at Commander Social. Ryan's like the dictator. He's like, Zach, say this. And I'm like, yes, sir. That's not true. But like we're partners in all things.
The more you have, especially if you're trying to update them every time a set comes out, it's a nightmarish process going through a deck and finding cuts, let alone doing it for 5 decks, let alone doing it for 10 or 12 or 15.
Yeah, the cuts hurt.
Well, yeah, and I will say the homework episodes that you guys do are like really interesting. Like that was actually kind of part of what like led to this whole idea, which is, you guys report back like how the cards are doing. And I just really like that information. I think especially because I'm really bad at it. So like hearing how other people do it is really helpful.
Well, even if the information itself doesn't apply to you, the thought process is sometimes useful, I think.
Yep.
So Max, what are you at right now for decks that are like in your permanent rotation?
So I'm an odd duck. I only like having 4 to 5 decks total at a time because I'm like Zach. I'm a tinkerer. I build a deck, and it stays with me for 3 to 5 years unless it completely craps the bed and I have to throw it in the trash. So I only have 4 decks right now. It's Dramoka, Brago, Regna and Krav, and Tuvasa.
Okay.
In that order, from oldest to newest, essentially.
And what are you at currently right now, Chris?
3. You don't get to count modern.
Oh, hush your face now. Well, yeah, if you count modern, man, that's like my entire collection.
Have you built a Pioneer deck yet? A Pioneer deck
Oh,
yet?
I have 2 of them built right now, and
Nice.
I'm working on a 3rd.
Nice.
No, I currently have 4 decks, and I'm going to say I only have 2 of them that I consider pet decks.
Okay.
And that's my Mogus and Alessia deck, because they get ripped apart and then put back together, and then ripped apart and then put back together.
They're like Legos.
They just won't go
Yes.
away.
And it's like they're deck lists that I've memorized. So I'm
Okay.
like, when I go to rip them apart, I slap them together, and I'm like, oh, I'm at 95 cards. Okay, so let's put in 5 new cards and see what happens.
Nice.
So 2 of them are your pet decks, and we'll kind of then we'll focus in on the one step deeper. What makes that deck a pet deck? And we'll kind of go around the room, and we can start with Chris because you just mentioned that. Why does that one deck of the stable of 5 or 6 or however many you have? What makes that deck that 1 or 2 decks that you absolutely fall in love with? What makes it do that? What makes a deck click for you?
They're the most fun to play, probably.
Okay.
I know, we'll take my Mogus deck, for instance. It's a very unique deck. You don't see, a deck that sits there and its only game plan is to make the game fast, but is not combo-oriented.
Okay, so it stands out as a kind of special thing.
Yep. My Slivers deck was my, ultimate pet deck,
Sure.
and then you guys hated me for, ever, so I just got rid of it.
Well, in that okay, so that
Hey.
is that part of the equation where the deck became not fun to play because everyone's reaction to the deck made
Yes.
it okay. How about you, Max? Is Dramoka your baby or is it Brago?
I have 2 babies, and it's Dramoka and Brago.
Okay.
And for 2 very different reasons.
Brago's such a cheeseball deck. I won with that this week, and it was I felt disgusted. I had to go home and shower.
You can say it. You can say you felt like a scumbag. It's okay.
Oh, I did. I mean, when
We'll
you
buy,
yell,
we'll buy you a shirt. I'll tie the
when
score.
you
I'll
use
buy you a
Psionic
shirt
Resonator with Brago and Reality Acid, you're just like, why am I even playing this game?
to win. So yeah, Brago and Dramoka are my 2 pet decks out of all 4 of mine. They've been around the longest. I've put the most money, the most time, blood, sweat, and tears into them. Dramoka is my pet deck in the sense that it's green, white, flying tribal. So it's essentially mono white flying tribal with green support.
Okay.
And I could swap in Shalai, and it'd probably be a better deck, to be honest.
But Dramoka to you is a special
Dramoka
thing
is
too.
just my thing. It was the card that called out to me from that cons block. I'm like, I'm gonna do it, and it can't leave the command zone now.
That's why I told Sieb if I would have found one in foil at that GP Indy, I was going to bend the one in half and just stick it back in his box and see if he noticed.
Dramoka is one of those decks that can play at any play level. If I go against a bunch of hyper competitive decks, I'm gonna be the slowest guy on the table, but I'll sandbag and maybe I'll pull a victory out. But it's also a deck that I can take with a bunch of precons and maybe pull punches or just play as the deck is supposed to play.
Keep a
And
one land hand.
Well,
hey, now it worked.
but I would say that's,
Not.
a new player isn't going to necessarily feel like something unfair happened when they're just getting hit with dragons.
Exactly. Or angels.
Sure. Okay.
Brago
Or
is the
birds.
completely opposite end of that scale. It is my as close to CDH as I want to get deck.
okay.
It has the fast mana. It has a lot of... It locks the game out. It doesn't win. Chris said it right. You win by annoying your opponents to death. And I'm okay with that because I'm a scumbag.
Well, and that's if that's a thing you're doing and with a play group that knows it's coming,
Right.
That's a whole different thing too.
Brago is not the deck I play every week no matter what. It's the deck I play once a month.
And I'll say this, joking aside, I've played against that Brago deck plenty often. It's still relatively fair.
Yes, there's no winter orb, there's no stasis, there's no any hardcore lock
WinCon.
or win con, to be quite honest. So hence, I only play it once a month.
Okay.
But
so we'll throw over to Ryan here. What makes a deck your pet deck, and tell us a little bit about your pet deck.
All right. Okay. So to me, a pet deck is defined by how much attention you give it, right? So, like I said, I like the process of making decks, and I make decks all the time. But there's very rare does a deck like capture my attention where I'm thinking about it and I'm like, oh, I want this deck to be better, and like what things is this deck missing, right? Like, is it missing card draw? Is it missing ramp? Is it missing removal? How can I adjust it for my meta? Let me talk to Zach about it. Hey, Zach, I'm building this deck. Like, what do you think? And, I play against it, play against him. And it's really just kind of like constantly on my brain. And to me, I think that's what makes it a pet deck. And right now, my current pet deck is Kadena Slinking Sorcerer. It's from Commander 19, so it's my newest deck. I have not made a deck since. And I am really trying to make morphs like good, like really good. And that's a hard thing to do.
So I have a story about that general.
Okay.
Playing 3 weeks ago with a buddy in the shop, and I didn't bother reading the card, and he convinced the whole table that it reads that your morphs just are free to play.
All the time.
All the time. Yes. And he's just like, play a morph, draw a card, play a morph, draw a card. And I'm like, this is stupid. I was like, I could have sworn we did a review on this, and I said this was the worst of the decks. I'm like, this I must have been wrong. And then I read the card a couple weeks later. I'm like, oh, you were cheating. That's what was going on.
Every commander's better if you can cheat.
Right?
So was this a thing, Ryan, where you've been trying to like figure out a morph deck for a long time, and then all of a sudden here comes this commander that does the thing you've always wanted?
It was exactly that. I felt like this commander was made for me. I had an Animar Morphs deck like a long time ago, and it was fine. But the thing is, I've been primarily a limited player for a lot of my career playing Magic, and Morph is like my favorite limited mechanic of all time, because I feel like it gives you like these like abilities to play mind games, and it's like, it's like, what's in the box? Like you got the face down card and you're like, oh, is it Willbender? Am I gonna,
So it's always Willbender.
It is, right? And so I've loved Morph, and then Kadena comes along and it's like, wait a minute. So my first one's free, so 0 mana 2/2 that draws me a card. Sign me up. And I was like, okay, I'll put all the flash enablers in there so I can play one on everybody's turn and like really take advantage of that cost reduction, because it happens on everybody's turn.
Nice. So how often have you played this deck since you got it?
Every chance I get. Although I will say, I usually only play it like once per session. It's usually the first game, because like I'm like, oh, I haven't played in a week, and now it's like let me pull out my pet deck and like stroke its hair, shuffle it up all nice, get the cut, and then like let's see how it plays, And I'm constantly like trying to like put new cards into it. I just put Words of Wind into it. And I did some really ridiculous stuff with that, because you can like play a morph and then, tap your Soul Ring for mana and then skip drawing, return the Soul Ring, play it again, and like really ramp all out. And I don't know. It's really fun, and it doesn't feel oppressive, but like I'll talk to Zach. So does it feel oppressive playing against it?
I wouldn't say it feels oppressive. I mean, you definitely, every time that you've played it, you've definitely done some like stuff. I mean, I think the Brine Shaman feels a little oppressive, because I like untapping like any Magic player does. But overall, I'd say it feels like a fair deck. Like, morphs aren't that great, except for Brine Elemental or whatever. But like, yeah, like he tries to go wide with them, and he's got blockers, and it's like, well, if I attack, what am I attacking into? Like, yeah, it looks like a 2/2, but is it really something crazy? I don't know, because I don't know cards, and yeah, it's fun to play against. I don't mind it.
And the deck actually is pretty resilient, because like when somebody rasps the board, you're like, oh look, it was Grim Harrowspecs, and I'm gonna draw a whole bunch of cards.
Well, one of the things I've kind of noticed sometimes about decks and the threat level of them, there are some decks where the people you play against know how strong the deck is, but it's still sometimes difficult to justify responding to it. And I think my Reki deck kind of falls in that.
No, it doesn't.
No, it does
that
not.
Deck is CEH 100%, and you need to just stop playing it.
You're sitting on the opposite end of command zone next year in Vegas.
I mean, that's getting down to the point where you're going to sit down with Max and I, and we're going to have a couple beers one night, and we're going to lay it out, and we're going to be like, this card needs to be cut, and this card, now we're down in the power level the rest of us are at.
So we're cutting Reki, is all I heard.
I just in an attempt, like I'm up in the CMC by throwing in
The Great Henge, because
Great
it's only going to cost me
Oh,
double
it's so
threes with Galta.
Oh man, the
And
Great Hedge is so busted. Like every time Zach's drawn it when we're playing Brawl, it just wins the game.
I occasionally have to pay up to 3 mana for it.
Up to 3.
I mean,
So he's only paying 1 because it nets him 2 because it taps for 2.
And he draws a card.
Right?
listen.
And gains a life when he casts another. Aw.
It's pretty sweet when you pair it up
This
with
is a
Yarok.
dying argument, Dana. I'll throw you the rope
All right,
anytime
okay,
for that
all right.
hole you're digging.
There's 4 of us. Your other show can't have your back anymore.
So we'll jump over to Zach here. Zach, what is your pet deck and or decks here you've got for us?
I think my current like pet deck is my Yawgmoth deck. Originally, it started out kind of as a Vorthos flavory thing because I'm like all into like I don't know Phyrexian stuff and like Yawgmoth and like all that. And I was like, yeah, I'll build this. And I was like, it'll be a mono black deck, so I can do like the mono colored stuff and I don't have to worry about mana fixing. And I built it and it just looks like so much fun to play. And then, or I built it on like, you know, like on Architect or whatever. And then it just looked like so much fun. And we did an episode on it and I was like, I'm going to build this. So I built it and it's a lot of fun. I think I have a lot of fun playing it. And I think people generally speaking have fun when I play it. Oftentimes someone will copy Yawgmoth or steal Yawgmoth, and I've definitely had someone steal Yawgmoth and kill me with poison counters. It's not been great, but it's just fun to play. It's something that I like to do a lot. I've had it since I guess whenever Modern Horizons came out, whenever that is.
This last summer?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of the summer.
Yeah, like March, I want to say.
So
Was it that? Yeah.
I'm definitely always looking to make changes to it to like power it up, and I put some Throne of Eldraine cards in. I put in, what did I put in? I put in that it's 2 black for a fairy rogue. What is that? Rankle, Master of Pranks.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that guy's pretty sweet.
Master of Prankles.
Pringles.
So
So in the case of this deck, then it was the character almost more than the text in the card that what drew you in to want to build it in the first place was Yawgmoth versus like what he did.
Right. I'd say that's correct. It was a combination of that and the fact that it would be a monocolored deck, and I'd been kind of looking to make a monocolored deck for a while.
Oh, that's actually interesting though. Like the 2 decks you guys have just cited, was one that you picked kind of based on the character, and one Ryan picked based on the mechanic.
Right.
But I think that really kind of speaks to one of the things that makes a deck be one that you fall in love with. It has that other element to the deck that maybe isn't just tied to performance. There's something about it that sinks a hook into a person personally to a degree. And Chris talked about, his deck kind of doing a unique thing, and Mac talked about Dramoka being kind of a unique thing, having green flyers. It really does seem like that's part of this thing that makes you fall in love with these decks. Is it something that, I don't know how else you would phrase it, but it does speak to you on a personal level.
Right. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And like, I definitely know that this is the deck that I love the most out of all of them because like, I see these altars on the internet and I'm like, oh my gosh, those are so good. I was like, but I'm not going to pay that much for a card. I was like, there's no way I can't. And the only altar I own is of a Phyrexian Soul Ring that I got from Ryan on CCO. Like he and I talked about what I was kind of looking for, and he did it for me, and it's pretty awesome. I like it a lot.
Nice. Well, that's kind of another thing too. Is these decks are the ones people tend to kind of go that extra mile in terms of, I'm going to foil this deck out, or this is what I'm going to get altars for, or
Signatures.
Right, or I'm going to, this is my special deck box. I bought this, nice Aaron Kane deck box, and I'm using that for my favorite deck. It kind of has that effect on people here as well.
I don't really keep mine in a special box. It's kind of like a shoebox
Like
that just says hashtag Get Big John on it.
Nice.
So Dana, I had a question for you. One of the things that I was curious about is how unique the deck is. Like, does that make it more special in your opinion? Because I feel like some of the things, like, I've never really heard of anybody else having like a recce deck, right? So like, is there like a hipster element to this? Like, oh, it's something nobody's heard of.
For me, absolutely. Like, nothing makes me lose interest in a deck faster than someone else playing that deck. Yeah, like
I know how to get rid of it.
everyone else playing Recce.
There are only 141 Recce decks on EDH, and Dana is one of them.
I'm actually probably 3 of them because like they probably have one on deck stats they're scraping and one on Goldfish.
If you and I build it and we just continuously play it against them, maybe eventually he'll just be like, this isn't fun anymore.
I wanted to do that with his Edric deck, just completely mirror it.
But no, really, like that's, for me, that is a big deal that the deck is a unique thing. My pet deck's definitely so, but like generally speaking, nothing makes me lose interest in a deck more than someone playing something similar to it. I have a Mina and Dan the Landfall deck that is kind of one in my stable, and it's a deck I'm a fan of. But when that Lord Windgrace deck came out, before I saw the deck list, and they don't play very similarly, and there's not a lot of overlap, but I was immediately like, I'm not going to want to play that Mina and Den deck because that Windgrace deck's going to be too close to it. And it wound up not being the case. But similarly, I have a Sigarda Enchantress deck, and it was one of my earliest decks, so it's not maybe as unique as some other things. But when the Tuvasa and Estra deck came out, it was the same thing. I'm like, there's an Enchantress deck as a precon, and I saw a bunch of them, and it made me not want to play my Enchantress deck to a degree. So that's definitely a weird aspect for me, is the deck has to be like this unique thing, or for me to really fall in love with it. Because I think my 3 decks that I would consider pet decks right now would be my Recce deck, my Glissa the Traitor Death Touch deck, and my Vela the Nightclad Artifact deck. And they're all 3 kind of weird, unique things. So for sure, for me, that's a big deal.
So a CEDH deck, a blue-black overpowered deck, and a Golgari deck that he misses all the triggers in the world on.
Sounds like a scumbag to me. He needs to buy a shirt.
Yeah, right, sure.
That's how this is going.
So does that matter for you guys? Like, would you care if someone else showed up with a similar? Because Kadana obviously is a deck that's a precon, so there's probably plenty of them that are similar to that out there. How much does that matter to you, Ryan?
Well, so for that deck in particular, I don't think very much at all, although I do have decks where it does, right? So I have a Grenzo Havoc Razor deck that's all about playing with other people's cards in mono red, and I've never seen another thing like it. It doesn't really lean super hard into the goat, although, I mean, it can. But, I'm really excited, and it's, this thing that I came up with all on my own, and yeah, there's something special about that.
How about you, Zach? Does that affect you at all? Does that matter to you?
It does and it doesn't. Like, I'll be like, I'll see a set get previewed. I'll see a card get previewed. I'm like, oh, that would be a cool commander. But, like, everyone sees that card and is like, that'd be a cool commander. Sure. And they end up, there's all this content from great content creators of, making this deck. And then everyone's kind of like into it and it becomes an in thing. And I'm just like, no, my shirt says #hipster. I'm out.
Well, it's one of the reasons you guys have yet to see my fairy group hug deck, because everyone's playing that deck right now.
Sure. Well, I think also as a content creator, not that our influence is that wide necessarily, but there are people listen to these shows, and I have absolutely seen people like, hey, here's my Recce deck that I built when I was inspired by you, and I have to I can't. It doesn't bother me when someone else does it based on my deck. So there's an element of that too, where like your deck can only be so unique,
right?
Particularly when you're someone who talks about it on a podcast that people actually listen to, and then they maybe go emulate that. What am I going to do? Like take my deck apart because someone liked it? That's insane.
That must feel nice. No one's ever really built a deck after a deck tech that I've done. I don't know. Maybe your decks are better than mine.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you did knock him out in the rotisserie draft.
Yeah, you did.
You know what?
Well, at least you knew what Grafdigger's Cage did. So
I will say I know that
in Canada they don't have Grafdigger's Cage.
Oh, okay.
I know that some folks were inspired by your Alayla Fairy deck. So
Yeah, that one
I
seems
think
to have
people
been
have.
going over pretty well.
So yeah, I mean, that's its own thing too. The ability to have somebody like your deck so much they want to go make it. That does make you feel pretty good about finding this cool and unique thing. So yeah, for sure. Is there anything that's made a deck fall out of status or fall out of favor for you? There's been a deck that you've just loved and then you found yourself for whatever reason not liking it. Why has that happened? Is there anything for you guys that's changed?
I've got one. I could tell a story. Okay, so I was really happy with my Alesha deck. Chris probably knows what I'm talking about. And
Oh yeah, I love it.
and I played it against a couple folks in Vegas, and it did a really nasty thing where Master of Cruelties came out and really wrecked a couple of people on this podcast. And honestly, I have not played the deck since. Seriously.
You steer into the skid there, Ryan, and just go with it.
Well, okay.
The thing that happens to me is, there's two instances of this. First is I built a deck that ended up being too powerful, and I won on turn 6 with it pretty frequently. It was my Tezzeret deck, and I was like, oh, I can't play this anymore. People are starting to get upset. But the thing that happens to me, and that's part of why the stable was kind of cool, is I'll keep changing a deck, and it'll end up not being the same as it was in the beginning, and it feels different to play, and I'm just like, I was like, this isn't fun, and I just kind of do that. And now that's why I want to do the stable thing where I keep up with what the changes are, so I can be like, oh, let me roll back to a previous version, and maybe it'll still be fun.
Oh yeah, I've absolutely screwed up decks by making changes, and all of a sudden you're so far away from the original vision, it's changed how the deck feels to play. I also, though, I know what you're saying about power level. If it's a deck that you love a lot and you're continuously tweaking it, you can very easily find the power level has outstripped what your intention was. I don't think my Recce deck is a CEDH level deck, but it's much stronger than I ever intended it to be.
I can honestly say I've had 3 people come up to me in the store and say that they think your deck is CEDH level.
Okay, well,
I'm being completely honest with you. That's why I brought it up.
I don't think it is that level, but it's much more powerful than I intended, and that's actually one of the reasons I do not play it that much anymore. Is because I still play it, but I've intentionally I don't bring it every other week at least, so I'm not tempted to play it. It's really resilient, and it's much better than it was ever supposed to be.
Well, it's also really hard to power down a deck, right? It feels so bad.
Yeah.
It's like if you're doing that, you might as well just take it apart.
Well, especially a deck like that one where it's powering it down would consist of taking out a good creature for a less good creature. Because I'm running no non-legendary creatures as it is. So okay, I can take out this one creature for this one. And I've done some of that. I'm no longer running a Vorinclex in the decks,
Good
for
man.
example.
Good man.
I have no Eldrazi Titans in there. So there's an element of that. But then the other half of that is stuff that's really efficient is still really good in that deck, even if the creature itself isn't that good. Avaya Pashiri is a really good creature in that deck, even though it's not a good card. So a deck that's really synergistic like that, it's kind of tough to specify what you're going to take out because it's not necessarily the card that matters so much as the interaction between the cards.
There are 3 cards I can take out of that deck to dumb it down.
Genesis Wave, Kamal's
Nope,
Drake
those can
Vow,
stand.
and
Your 3 mana doublers can come out, and it'll dumb that deck down.
Okay, that's true, because that's what enables me to do the storm turn.
No, man doublers are
Take out the mana
dope
doublers.
and do dope things.
They are really, really good. But if you want to dumb it
That's
down,
true.
just those cuts right there
Because
would dumb it down.
that's part of the reason Genesis Wave and Kamal's Riddick Vow are so good is because that's why I can do Kamal's Riddick Vow for 26
Yep.
on turn 8. That's a good point.
scumbag.
I'll ponder it. Well, that's actually, Ryan talked about doing stats for decks and looking back at that's one of the things I'm curious at the end of the year when I go back and go through my stats. I want to take a look at the win rate of some of my decks and be like, that deck shouldn't be winning, 55% of my games. And the fact that it is no longer just a luck situation. That means the deck is more powerful than it should be for the meta I'm playing in.
Tisk, 75% rule, buddy.
Win 75% of your games.
Damn, that's right.
60%, you're considered a pro.
Don't tell Jason that's what it means.
I don't work for him.
But no, that's one of the reasons I want to check that out to see. But yeah, you're right. It's really hard to power down a deck, particularly if it's a deck that you kind of love.
Ryan, in your deck, I wonder if your data is skewed on your games, because most of them you play with me, and a lot of times you sit in the sweet spot. So it's like a free almost. You got me.
So I should consider like the base chance win to be 33% instead of 25.
Yeah, basically.
Right. Playing with Zach is like an extra win.
Yeah, I think what you should do is when you count your wins, if I'm not in the game, you get 1 point. If I am in the game, you get like 0.75 points.
Wow, that's more than I would give them.
That makes sense.
I will say though, recently, like it's been very different because when we're playing with strangers up at our store, it's like, okay, hold on, I have to go after Zach. Like I have to really get him. Which is like, that's when we're not playing at the store, when we're playing in our friend group, that doesn't really happen. But I'm like, well, I don't want, there to be like this appearance of unfairness. So I'm just like, default target Zach, get him. And I think
that's why I'm like, we're partners though, right? Wink, wink all the time. And he's like, no,
yep, I
attack you for 15.
I'm totally on Team Zach with this one. Whenever I'm playing a pod at the store with either Chris or Dana, or even both of them, if we end up in the same pod together, we all have this unspoken alliance. Like, we all have the same playmat. Let's be nice to each other for like the first 5 turns. Kill the stragglers, because who cares? They'll come back next week.
See, I'm nice. I play in with this with you. But
then
if
you
you've ever
murder me.
noticed, I sit there and I try to convince that other player that you need to die
Oh, I've
first.
noticed.
But I won't be the one who does it. I try to
know.
convince them to do it.
I noticed about the day after I stabbed you in the back 7 years ago.
I mean, Max isn't salty about that at all.
No, it was a smart move. I won that game.
I would have won that game if you would have just left me alone, like our agreement was.
Yeah, I saw an opportunity and I took it.
We call that a Ginger Joe move.
I was gonna say, isn't that the definition of a scumbag?
It is the definition of a scumbag. You should buy a T-shirt.
So is there anything else about a pet deck that kind of makes you fall in love with it? Is it, and here's the reason I'm asking this. My Veil of the Nightclad deck was one I built
Year and a half ago?
Jokingly.
kind of jokingly, but like I wanted a Demir deck and I had the Vela sitting there, and I had tried to build her as an Infect deck once upon a time.
As did I.
And Max did too once upon a time. And so I had the commander there, and I'm like, what could I build? And I'm like, okay, maybe I'll try Morphs. Actually, that was one of my ideas.
Gross.
But Black-Blue Morphs was way too weak because her Intimidate ability would work with Morphs. They're like, okay, maybe Eldrazi, but I don't like Eldrazi. So I went to Artifact Creatures, and then the Artifact sub-theme came out, and then the Tezzerets came in, and the pieces kind of fell into place. But the thing that's kind of really made me fall in love with that deck since I built it is the fact that it can win so many different ways. Plenty of times it's Tezzerets, but plenty of times I just can win with command damage because my creatures are all unblockable. And then plenty of times the creatures I'm swinging with aren't really creatures. They're stuff I've animated with Karn or I've animated with March of the Machines. So that's different and weird enough to stand out. Plus, the Vela herself has that exit the battlefield trigger, so there's enough times I can win with Vela damage or a combination of all those different things. One of the reasons I've fallen in love with that deck so much is the fact that it plays really, really differently every time, and it feels like I'm doing things that are interesting and unique, and that has become an important part of why I love that deck. Is that an important thing for anybody else? Is that something that jumps out at you? Chris kind of mentioned he likes the non-combat damage portion of Mogus. Are any of your decks from anybody? Feel free to jump in. Is that something that matters to you at all? Winning in a flashy way?
Oh, 100%, but
Yeah.
not necessarily a flashy way, but just like a different way every time. Like if decks are super linear and they do the same thing over and over again, I tend to get bored with them because I'm like, oh, it's just going to do its thing again. And I really like, that's why I don't play a lot of tutors, right?
Yeah.
So that definitely speaks to me.
Yeah.
Like tutors don't give you a story to tell usually, and I want a story.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, that's how I feel too when I build decks. Like, first, I just don't want to win by turning creatures sideways because that ain't me. And then
Okay.
I always like try to find these like alternate win conditions just to like, because I want something, when I play EDH, I want big things to happen. Either I want to win in a spectacular fashion or I want to lose in a spectacular fashion. And I definitely do more losing in a spectacular fashion than winning. But like, that's the thing I want to do. I want to see big things happen, and like that's what actually like drew me to EDH in the first place, was you can do these big things, and I don't know, I just think that's cool.
Chris and Max, you guys were both giving each other looks there. So Max
Tutors are 100% every single one of my decks.
Okay, but you run tutors, but you run like one or two tutors. You're not someone who's running like every tutor possible to go get a piece. You're just running an answer.
Yep, and they're pretty much, that's the reason that they're there, is to set up for like answering to the board state.
Yeah.
Like in Mogus, I'll go for a damnation or an ensnaring bridge to save me so I don't die, that kind of stuff.
And I tend to run like one or two tutors and decks for the same reason. And Zach and Ryan, like I've seen you guys, your deck list, you guys have tutors and decks, but it doesn't seem like you're also not running tutors to go get the same win condition consistently.
Oh yeah, definitely. Because I mean, I feel like that's like a hallmark of the CEDH thing, right? Which is like a critical mass of tutors, so that you can kind of, they call the deck like Flash Hulk because it wins with Flash and Protean Hulk every time. And I want my decks to be different. Like for example, in the Morph deck currently, I have Phage the Untouchable. I don't know if any of you know what that is.
Oh yeah.
And so my plan with that is to somehow manifest it, right? Like either manifest it off the top of my library or use the new card from the deck to like manifest a card in your hand and just be like, hey, I'm attacking you with these 3 creatures. And I'm like, oh, okay, no blocks. I'm like, it was Phage, like,
But like that's also one of those things. If you die to that, you still felt like you saw something really cool. Like I feel like I don't get salty at all to that loss, because even losing to a great story is still a great story.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and you, as the loser to it, you also get to go tell that story to people, and like that's fun.
Yeah.
No, a win is a win, and I'll take it however I can get it.
So that's less important to you, though, Max. Is what you're saying. Okay.
I mean, I think
he probably plays like 8 tutors in that Regan and Krav deck just so he can get Blood Bond out.
I run 3.
It's more than I run in my decks.
Maybe 2. I don't think. Oh no, there's 3. There's a Diabolical Edict in there.
Well, and I would say you mentioned the CEDH thing where you're running a bunch of tutors to go consistently get that combo win. That's not a bad thing, or like I don't mean that in a critical way, and I don't think you do either. Ryan.
Oh no, absolutely not. It's just not my preferred play style. But I definitely don't begrudge that from anybody else.
For sure. It's just a different goal. Like what they're deriving their fun from in that deck is a different thing than what we're talking about deriving our fun from.
Right.
Oh yeah, and I've actually flirted with the idea of making a CEDH deck just to have one. Right, like I really I want to have that experience. Like I have a Flusterstorm that I'm ready to put into a CDH deck at some point, because I feel like that's like a really good card in CDH, but not super great in like a casual game.
Right. Yeah, like I don't have any decks where Flusterstorm would be any good, and it's absolutely a strong card in CEDH in any blue deck that can run it.
I mean, honestly, I'd probably make Flash Hulk or like Mono Blue Teferi.
Okay.
Mono Blue Teferi is so good.
It is so good.
Big Mono Blue Urza.
Oh, that one's really good too.
I do have an Urza just sitting around.
Isn't that going to go in your Emery deck?
I think so.
Except, is it sitting around, or did I take it?
Too.
They just keep making awesome mono blue commanders.
Yeah, why can't they give me another red one or red and black?
I mean, I don't know. What's her name from the pre-con seems pretty good with the Luton.
Oh, Anji,
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but she's good when you're not playing when you're playing like the bad version of her, where you're running just all trash cards.
Yeah.
Where you're just trying to filter down to World Gorger combo.
I thought Greven was real cool too. Like, actually, this is an example of that. Neat. Like, I built a Greven deck on paper. I mean, on online. I was like, yeah, this is gonna be awesome. And then like everyone's like, we're under Greven. We've built Greven decks. And I was like, I'm out.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, there's hipster Zach showing through, right? Like, like we talked about earlier.
Well, that was kind of the problem I had with Sir Conrad. I wanted to build Sir Conrad on paper, and I did. And then I had the deck kind of plotted out, and I'm like, I'll go check EDH Rec to see if any finished versions and see how similar they are. And I'm like, oh, this is the same deck every person built. So I'm like, oh, well, I guess that's as far as that project's going.
Yeah, but sometimes I make a deck like that where I made like Ariel Knight Tribal. And like that deck was
terrible.
Yeah, it was fun to make, but it's not good.
Oh, it's like my Lycia deck.
Ryan's like, I just want to make decks. I don't care if they're bad or not. I just want to make them.
Yeah, and it's cool, and it's like night themed, and it's a tribal deck, and like that's cool, but it just is so clunky, and every once in a while it can do like really weird things. But yeah, I don't know, like.
You turn that into people holding pieces of fence tribal.
Oh, for sure, for sheezy. But yeah, so like that fell out of favor for me because I'm like, well, it was like a swing and a miss, but the deck's still together. I can still play it, and actually sometimes I do, like when I'm like essentially want to like bring my power level way down. I have stuff like that to bring out.
And he still wins. That's weird.
Well, I can't turn off the politics, man. Like,
it's true. It's true.
It's really hard. So actually, that's a question. This is like totally off topic, but I just want to know. So, I've only played a couple games with Dana and Max, and I haven't played with Chris at all. But who would you say is like the most political amongst you?
Chris.
I am for sure.
I would say Chris is definitely.
Hands down.
I definitely want to see a Ryan versus Chris game.
I would say Chris is the most political, and Chris is probably the most cautious as a player. He makes probably the least amount of mistakes, I would say.
Comes from your competitive background.
Definitely does.
I am probably the sloppiest player among the three of us. Max is better than I am.
Yes, I am not the worst at something.
It must feel different for you, Max.
It does.
I'm just kidding, dude. I love you.
It does so much.
I would say this. For whatever reason, I think it's a combination of the decks I play and the cards I play in the deck, and I would guess some of it is my demeanor as well. I don't get attacked in games as often as I feel like I probably should get attacked. People let things slide in games when I do them for whatever reason, I think. Do you guys think that's true?
Yes.
Yeah. I've seen it numerous times.
And
I have been the politician saying, if we don't kill Dana right now, he's going to rebuild and he's going to kill us all. Okay, I'm going to kill you, Max.
But do you take my aspect, and after the game's over, then you kind of do the little subtle jabs, like, I told you, this is what happens if you don't listen to me.
No, because I get tilted and I just don't play with those people again. Or I leave to watch hockey.
I don't know. Like, I think Dana's better than he's giving himself credit for. Like, we were playing in the rotisserie, and, like, I don't remember exactly what, but Dana was doing some pretty dumb stuff. And, like, not dumb as in, like, bad, but dumb as in, like, bad for me.
Broken.
And,
yeah.
He was definitely, like, playing the politics, too. And I was like, I sent Joe a text message, and I was like, bro, we gotta get Dana. And then he's
I would've called a judge.
he sends me a thumbs up emoticon, and I was like, okay. So then we got Dana, and I was like, we're gonna get CC Orion now, and he's like, yeah. And the next thing I know, I'm dead. But yeah, no, I thought you were a formidable opponent, Max.
Well,
not so much.
I mean, maybe me underestimating myself is maybe me underestimating myself is part of that. If I actually believe that I'm not a threat, it makes it that much more convincing. So that could well be. Any final thoughts here on pet decks or anything anybody wants to share before we check out?
I'm no longer friends with Zach after that comment.
Love you, Max.
You know, Max, this would be a different story if you were listening to me for that rotisserie draft.
I know. Next year.
I had that whole deck just sketched out for you and everything. I had all of your picks ready. And you go off and take like Anafenza pick one or something stupid like that.
Should have worked. It does work when I actually play the deck in a real pod. It actually does pretty well.
Whoa.
I just got
What's that supposed
hosed
to
that
mean?
day. You weren't in that pod when I lost.
That's true.
We lost simultaneously.
Well, I'll be looking forward to seeing Ryan's final stats here on the year. Do you know how many games you have down so far this year, Ryan?
Actually, I'm trying intentionally not to count them yet, and I'm also not putting in a spreadsheet yet because then I'd be able to like look at the number of lines and go, oh, it's this many. And I'm gonna like have Zach, how many games do you think I played this year? And I think it's gonna be a lot less than I think.
Okay.
We've talked about this some. I have a number in my head.
I know where I'm at for total games just because I've been numbering them.
Yeah.
But I have intentionally also not gone through to check like wins or anything like that just because I just don't want to know till it's all said and done.
What number are you at currently?
290 something.
Oh, I don't even think I'm going to get anywhere close to that.
No, you're at less than a third of that, Ryan.
But I also banged out like 70, I want to say 70 some maybe that week we were in Vegas.
especially because we were there a whole week.
A whole week.
Right.
So I did that
mean,
kind
we
of
did-
artificially inflated those numbers.
We did 35 in 3 days
Yeah.
in the hotel room.
But was that
Which I
like
was
2
the
player,
best
just you
out of
2, or was that 4?
3-player. We had Henry with
Oh,
us.
okay.
So
So we had three players for a couple of days, and then
and then you guys showed up,
Yeah,
and
so
Ryan and Brando showed up, and
Dan
Canada
Krause.
came, and
So we had a bunch of people then like Wednesday on, but it was just mostly 3-player games for the first couple of days. But even like Wednesday on, like we played a lot of games.
yeah.
So that kind of skews those numbers. Do you guys have any interesting podcast things happening? Anything you want to talk about is coming up that you want to promo, or just want to tell everyone when your show comes out?
Directly after this, we're going to stream Brawl. So,
nice.
By the time you're hearing this,
we'll have streamed Brawl.
You could go
Get
check
in
out
your
the
time
videos on
machine and
YouTube.
go back in time.
That's true. Yeah, this will be out on Monday, the 27th, 28th.
Something like that
Yeah.
before Halloween.
This camera. Let them know what's going on in your
Right.
life. I don't know if we have any other Hot Ones fans out there, but if you have not checked it out on
love
YouTube,
Hot
it's
Ones.
fantastic.
Meh.
I just watched the Paul Rudd one
Yeah,
today.
right? It was a really good one.
It was good.
Oh, him telling the story about taking pictures with his cell phone. Yeah, that was a good one.
Oh, actually, okay, so there is one thing that I should talk about for our podcast that I would definitely feel super bad if I didn't say, which is I want to give a huge shout out to our silent partner, Mike Condon. He's with us through thick and thin, and he's never on the microphone like we are, but he definitely supported us and helped us get everything ready with our equipment and stuff for this. So, Mike, we love you, man. Thank you so much.
Gentleman and scholar.
Aw. Can I shamelessly plug myself?
Yes.
Sure.
I will, in the near future, be on an episode of CAD Commander at Populum with Canadian Ryan.
Oh, nice.
Ooh.
So look for that in the near future.
You mean Bullwinkle?
Yes, he is Bullwinkle. The Brando is Rocky.
Okay. All right. Well, Ryan and Zack, thank you very much for joining us. That was a lot of fun. We appreciate you giving us some of your time to be in the show. And you want to tell people where they can find you on the Twitter birds or online?
All right, so you can find Zach at Z4CK.
38. I mean, I guess I'm going to do the Jason Alt thing and say, we have a Patreon at patreon.com/Commander
Oh,
Social.
yeah.
And you can find me individually at Green Geek, and together we are at Commander Social on Twitter.
And our YouTube is /Commander Social. YouTube
Yeah,
/Commander
where-
Social, not just /Commander
Where you can
Social.
see your beautiful faces every week. Does the audio show come out the day before the video show? Is that right?
Most of the time.
It actually it really flip flops. It really depends on the week. This week they came out on the video came out later than the audio, but usually it's the reverse. Our process to get something out is actually like super long. Like you guys we're recording today and it's going to be out Monday, so that's like
Blows my mind.
5 days.
Yeah, and like our turnaround time is 10 days. So it's really hard to do current stuff, which is why we get up to some shenanigans. And actually, I'm really excited for the episode that's coming out this upcoming week. It's a special one. It's it's Halloween themed. So actually, everybody should go check that out.
It's Halloween themed?
Okay. Absolutely.
I don't remember that.
Zach did not get that memo 10 days ago.
Zach's just not a memo guy.
It's true.
Okay, well, that will wrap up episode 153. Thanks for editor Ken Peddle. You can find him on Twitter at LOAD3R. Our podcast theme is Retro Future Dirty by Kevin MacLeod, licensed via Creative Commons. You can find me on Twitter at Dana Roach. You can find Max on Twitter at CMDR_Max. And you can find Chris at WiseSquishy1. We will be back on Thursday with a Deck Tech. Until then, I'm Dana.
I'm Max.
And I'm Chris.
I'm Zach still.
Boom.
And I'm Ryan.
And you guys are Commander Social.
Keep it social.